Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. And we have a lot to talk about again this week. Streets of New Capenna is officially out. So are those 5 commander decks that came out along with it. And we're not going to talk about Streets of New Capenna card prices in this particular video since, of course, like I said, they did just come out. So we don't really have a baseline yet to go by. They need to stabilize down a little bit as packs get cracked and such. However, there are a lot of cards moving because of the release. A lot of players are trying to upgrade those commander decks, or in other cases, they're just trying to build brand new commander decks around some of the new cards. Also, Pioneer cards are remaining red hot. Obviously, we've talked in previous weeks that if you want to get on the Pro Tour this season, you're going to have to go through a regional championship, and the format is going to be Pioneer. So a lot of players are scrambling to put together Pioneer decks, but also because so many players are getting involved now, there are some new builds coming out doing well on MTGO, and we're seeing cards from some of those decks spiking this week. And there's a lot of other things to talk about too. Because the market is so turbulent, again, this week our threshold is going to be $3. We're not going to talk about a card unless it's moving at least $3 up or down. Quickly before we get started though, just a fast reminder, if you go to FlipsideGaming.com, you can use the Heroes promo code to save 10% on orders over $10. Currently, you can pick up Streets of New Capenna products there. They have everything you see on the screen, as well as those commander decks. Plus, they have a whole lot of other things on their website too. Remember, if your order's over $100 or consists only of singles, shipping will be free in the United States. Also, when you use the Heroes promo code, it does support the channel, which is always appreciated. So thank you. And without any further ado, let's get into it. We're going to begin as we usually do with the Standard Legal Spotlight. This is where we talk about the Standard Legal cards moving the most this week. And you're going to see a lot of Innistrad double feature cards in this section today. Some of the cards in that set are still pretty turbulent since there are a limited amount of the more popular ones for sale online currently. In some cases, that means you'll see inflated prices, but in other cases, you will see the cards coming down, normalizing a little bit as well. I am curious to see what happens with cards from the set in the future, post-rotation, the ones that are still good in other formats, just simply because this was not a popular product, and not a lot of it was open, so I gotta wonder if some of these cards in the future could be hard to find. Anyway, let's see what's happening in this section. First, though, we have the Wandering Emperor. It's down $5.19 this week to $34.25. And this is normalizing after some big recent spikes due to the play it was seeing in Pioneer as well as Standard. In Standard last season, it was all over the place. Orzhov mid-range, mono white aggro, and much more. And it will continue to see play this new season, I have no doubt. Pioneer, it's in Azorius Control that is a popular and successful deck there. It's also in 4-color Fires of Invention and more. As a matter of fact, I mentioned at the top of the video, there's some new decks doing well on MTGO. One of those decks is mono white midrange, and it does run the Wandering Emperor. This also sees modern play, though, too. Azorius Control, Bant Control, and more there. In Legacy, sometimes you see this in Jeskai combo. And in Commander, it's in Isshin 2 Heavens is 1, and a number of other builds, old and new. Next, we have the Meat Hook Massacre. Now, this is the copy, of course, from Double Featured on $6.20 this week to $72.15. This finally comes down to be within a few dollars of the Midnight Hunt copy, so it feels like it has normalized. This has been seeing a lot of play in multiple formats. In Standard last season, you saw this in Orzhov Control, Esper, Planeswalkers, and much more. Again, I'm sure we're going to see this card a lot this season, too. In Pioneer, it's in Jaunt and Rakdos Sacrifice, as well as Mono Black Devotion, and it does get a good amount of commander play, too. It's in Korvold Faker's King, and those decks are seeing a lot more play now due to the support that card is getting from Streets of New Capenna. We'll talk more about that later. Chandra Dressed to Kill, the one from Double Feature, down $6.57 this week to $42.70. This one is down, but it still feels a little inflated. In the past Standard season, it was in Mono Red aggro, Gruul aggro, and I think there's a good chance it will still play a role this season. In Pioneer, though, it's in Mono Red aggro, which is another very popular deck in the format. It's also in Mono Red midrange. In Modern, you'll see this in Obosh aggro, Mono Red midrange, sometimes Mono Red aggro there too. This is also getting increased commander play now, thanks to Streets of New Capenna. You'll find this in builds like Jaxus the Troublemaker. I've also seen some picking this up as an upgrade to the Maestro's Massacre commander deck, and others are putting it in fresh builds around a card from there, Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame. First card moving up this week is Storm Carved Coast. It is the one from Double Feature, up $3.43 to $13.11. Last season, this was in Standard Jeskai combo, is a control and more. Again, you're going to see this in mana bases this season too. It's in a couple popular Pioneer decks as well, and I think that's why it's been hot recently. It's in Is It Control and Is It Phoenix. Good Commander mana base card as well. I've also seen some picking this up as an upgrade to the Maestro's Massacre Commander deck, or putting it in fresh builds around in Hello the Painter from there. Another land with Haunted Ridge, the Innistrad Midnight Hunt copy is up $3.39 this week to $15. The Innistrad Double Feature copy is up $3.88 to $15.49. Last season in Standard, of course, this saw play. It was in Rakdos Sacrifice, Grixis Control, and more. Again, it's going to be there this season too. Pioneer is pushing this the most, though. It's in Rakdos Midrange as well as Rakdos Sacrifice. This is also in a lot of Commander builds, including Korvold. And of course, it's in some builds around new cards too. Agnes the Dragon's Lash, Ziatora the Incinerator. Plus, it is another good upgrade to Maestro's Massacre. And I've seen it in fresh builds around in Hello and Cyrix too. And the last card in the section is Cultivator Colossus. Now, the double feature copy jumping up $23.45 to $50. This copy is dry online this week, and the price is inflated because of that. I don't think anyone's really spending $50 for this right now. Hopefully they're not anyway. This card's been hot recently, though, because of Modern. It's an Amulet Titan, but there's also a Wargate deck, which has been doing well on MTGO recently. And of course, this is part of that build. It's also in a variety of Commander decks, like Omnith Locus of Creation, for example. And that takes us to the Pioneer Illegal Spotlight. A lot happening here, as you could imagine. First, we have some cards going down in value. The Great Henge, this is down $3.09 to $54.93. So this is retracting a little bit after some recent increases. In Pioneer, you see this in Mono Green Stompy and Mono Green Midrange. It's also getting some increased Commander play now in some Falco, Spara, Pact Weaver builds. Next is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. The one from the list is down $3.11 this week to $31.34. This did jump last week, retracts some this week, and it was added to the list with Innistrad Midnight Hunt. It stayed through Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, but it's no longer there for New Capenna. Again, Pioneer has been pushing this. It's in Azorius, Jeskai, and Esper Control there. In Modern, you'll see this in Azorius, Jeskai, Bant, and Esper Control, sometimes 4-color midrange. Plus, it is getting some increased Commander play now around a New Capenna card, Quiza, Augur of Agonies. Temporal Trespass down $3.52 to $29.98. This is retracting some now after some pretty big spikes caused by Pioneer. This is in Is It Phoenix there. In Commander, it's also in various builds, including Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow. Twilight Prophet, the copy from the list, is down $8.55 this week to $22.45. This was added with Crimson Vow, but it is still there now going into New Capenna, and that is why the card is losing the value that it is losing. Remember, there's less cards on the list now starting with New Capenna, and even though the Magic version of the Stranger Things cards are heavily weighted in those set booster packs, any individual list card that's still there is getting pulled a lot more. That's being reflected in this price here. When it comes to gameplay, this is found in a number of different Commander builds, including Alper Markov. Days Undoing, the Magic Origins copy down $3.58 to $28.45. The list copy down $11.25 to $19.65. Guess what? It was added with Crimson Vow sticking around into Streets of New Capenna. Again, the quick infusion of copies into the marketplace is impacting this. Now, it has been hot because of Pioneer. You will find it in Is It Control builds with Narset there. In Legacy, this is in Jeskai Combo. Plus, this does get a little Commander play. And it is seeing some additional play now because of Streets of New Capenna. I've seen this in Quiza builds, Rafine Scheming Seer, Evelyn the Covetous. I also have noticed people seem to be adding this sometimes to the Obscura Operation Commander deck. And in other cases, they're putting it in fresh builds around a card from there, Tivit's Seller of Secrets. First card moving up in this section is Emrakul, the Promised End. It is up $7.12 to $62.62. The main reason, of course, is Pioneer. This is jumping because it is part of that new mono-white mid-range deck I mentioned a moment ago. This also sees play in Modern sideboards. It's in 5-color Omnith, Elementals, and more there. And it's in a number of Commander builds, including Kozilek the Great Distortion. Plus, it was in a build around Jolene the Plunder Queen on a Game Nights episode of the Command Zone podcast this week. Jolene is a card that can be found in the Riveteer's Rampage Commander deck. Leyline of Sanctity, the Magic 2011 copy up $3.84 to $14.47. The Modern Masters 2015 copy up $8.02 to $17.95. Many times you'll see this one in Pioneer Hidden String sideboards. It's good against Mono Red Aggro, for example. This is also a highly played sideboard card in Modern. You'll see it in Living End, Dredge, and much more there. You'll even see this in Legacy sideboards of Oops All Spells and Lion's Eye Diamond Dredge. Plus, it does get some Commander play too in various builds. Hallowed Fountain, the original Dissension copy up $8.36 this week to $34.19. Okay, so Shocklands are all getting another reprint in Unfinity. But of course, players are scrambling to build Pioneer decks now, and they might need some of these cards. And I suppose if you're going to buy a Shockland, makes sense to buy one of the originals when these do lose value. The originals will lose the least amount of value, I guess. When it comes to gameplay, it is a Shockland, so you know it's going to see play in many different decks in a number of formats. In Pioneer, it's in Azorius Control, 4-color Ascendancy, Bant Spirits, and more. Modern, it's in Hammer Time, Azorius Control, and much more there. And it is a big mana-based card in Commander, too, in a lot of builds. Resplendent Angel. Now, this one is mostly moving because of Commander. It's up 852 this week to 39.89. Streets of New Capenna did bring a little Angel support, and this is seeing increased Commander play now in Giada Font of Hope builds. I've also seen some Pioneer and Modern Angel Brewers using this in Giada. We'll have to see if any of them can gain traction. Resplendent Angel and Giada were both mentioned in a Tolarian Community College video as well, talking about potential future Pioneer decks. Cavalier of Thorns, this is up 1023 to 1394, and that is because of Pioneer mostly. This is part of one of those Pioneer decks that really did well in MTGO this past week, and this time it's Mono Green Ramp. It did put up good results and was featured by some content creators this week as well, which could have brought some more attention to it. This is also found in Mono Green Midrange and Pioneer, and it does get a little Commander play too. Currently, I have seen this in a build around one of the new Capenna cards. That's Rocco Cabaretti Caterer. Plus, there's a little speculation on this card too, based on Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate leaks that occurred recently. I'm not going to show you the leaks or go into too much detail about them because I know a lot of players do not want to see those until they're officially previewed, and I want to respect that. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and then I'm going to just vaguely tell you what I'm referring to here. But if you'd like to move on to the next card, this is the time to do so. In those Commander Legends leaks, we did see new gates, and we also saw a legendary Sultai creature that can be a commander for a gate deck called Nine Fingers Keen. And that's why it's possible there's a little spec on this card. Corvold Faker's King. Okay, the Throne of Eldraine foil copy. That's the one you would get in the Savage Hunger Brawl deck. It is up 418 this week to 1832. The list copy is up 803 to 2268. Interesting story there. This was on the list for Caltime, then it went away, returning in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, and it stayed through Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It is now gone for New Capenna. Throne of Eldraine, the non-foil copy, is up $10.69 to $24, and you would find those in collector boosters. So first off, Pioneer. This is in Jund's Sacrifice. I don't think that's the main reason it's moving this week, though. I think it's more because of Commander. This is a very popular Commander, and it's also in the 99 of some builds. A lot of new Capenna cards are ensuring that the Corvold builds see more play going forward. There's lots of cards that make treasure tokens. There's Blitz creatures you sacrifice if you play the Blitz cost. There's the Casualty mechanic that lets you sacrifice a creature to copy a spell. There's very specific cards that play well with this, like Riveteer's Ascendancy, for example. The list goes on, and not only are there a number of cards making the Corvold builds better, but this is also showing up in some decks around new commanders. Agnes, Ziatora, Vazikeen Negotiator, that one's a set booster rare. Plus, I have seen some picking this up as an upgrade to Riveteer's Rampage, and some are putting this in fresh builds around a card from there, Henzi Toolbox Tori. Plus, this also got a mention on a Tolarian Community College video this week, which could have brought some more attention to it. Blood Crypt from the list. Okay, last card in this section moving up. In theory, it's up $44.99 to $66.04, but that price again is pretty inflated due to the fact that there's not a lot of copies found online right now for sale. With the lack of sales data, that's going to skew some of our information. We do have to lean a little bit harder on asking price, and these asking prices are just simply too high. I don't think anybody's spending this for the card right now. At least I hope not again. Anyway, it was on the list for Crimson Vow and Neon Dynasty. It is now gone for New Capenna. It is another Shockland. In Pioneer, you'll see this in Rakdos Midrange, Rakdos Sacrifice, and more. Those are two popular builds in the format. In Modern, it's in Grixis Death Shadow, Jund, and much more there. Big mana-based card for Commander 2. I have seen a lot of people building around Lord Xander the Collector and using Blood Crypt in those builds. Plus, this was in a build around the Beamtown Bullies on that Game Nights episode this week. The Bullies can be found in Riveteer's Rampage. And that takes us to the Modern Legal Spotlight. Let's look at some cards going down and then some going up. First, we have Emrakul, the Eon's Torn from Rise of the Eldrazi, down $3.71 this week to $50.97. This is retracting a little bit after some recent increases. It was on the list for Zendikar Rising and Caltime, which is worth noting. In Modern, you'll see this in Indomitable Creativity, Enchantress, and more. Legacy, it's in Sneak and Show, Mono Green Cloudpost, and more there. Ren and 6 from Modern Horizons, down $4.23 to $100.10. This was also on the list for Zendikar Rising and Caltime. And we know it's getting a reprint in Double Masters 2022, which is why the card's soft right now. It still gets a ton of modern play. It's in 5-color Omnith, Jund, and much more. And it is in a number of commander decks too, including Korvold. Plus, I have seen some picking this up as an upgrade to Riveteer's Rampage, or to put in fresh builds around the Beamtown Bullies. Exquisite Blood, the copy from the list, is down $5.16 to $29.89. This was added with Crimson Vow. Guess what? Still there going into New Capenna, which is why it's losing the value it is. This was also recently reprinted in the Welcome to Castle Dracula Secret Lair. Great commander card and combo enabler here. Many times you find this one in Alper Markov and much more. Gemstone Caverns, the one from Time Spiral, is down $8.28 this week to $40.52. This was on the list from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms through Neon Dynasty. It did come off for New Capenna. Now, this card has been pretty hot. It's been going up quite a bit. So we're seeing some retraction this week, not too unusual for a card that's spiking heavily. In Modern, this is in Crashing Footfalls, Dredge, and more. This also gets a good amount of play in Commander, sometimes in Korvold. Mikaeus the Unhallowed, the copy from the list, down $8.59 this week to $33.52. This was added with Midnight Hunt, and guess what? Still there for New Capenna, which is why it's losing this value. Again, a lot of new copies are getting out there now. This is another good upgrade for Riveteer's Rampage, and I've seen this in some fresh Henzi builds too. Blood Moon from the Dark, down $9.70 this week to $108.51. This was added to the list with Crimson Vow. It is still there for New Capenna, but I don't really think the extra copies are having much of an impact on this copy of the card. A lot of collectors want this original one from the Dark, but it has been moving up a lot recently, so it's not, again, too surprising to see some retraction. Worth noting too, this was recently reprinted in the Mischief Secret Lair, so there's plenty of cheap copies of this card if you want to play with it. And you might want to, because it's pretty good. In Modern, you're going to see this in Murktide Regent, Crashing Footfalls, and more. Legacy, it's in Blood Moon Aggro, Goblins, sometimes Jeskai Combo. Vintage, you'll see it in Isn't Control. Plus, it is in a number of commander builds, including Krenko Mob Boss. Next, we have Doubling Season from Double Masters, up $4.18 this week to $85.23. Huge commander card in many builds, including Rin and Ciri Inseparable. Those decks are getting more play right now in Commander because of the cat and dog support that came from New Capenna. In fact, Doubling Season plays well with a lot of cards from the new set as well as the new Commander decks. For example, I have seen many putting this in builds around Ginny Fey Jetmir II, and this was in a Ginny Fey deck on that Game Nights episode this week. Chalice of the Void from Mirrodin is up $4.71 this week to $66.86. This cooled off a lot when Luris of the Dream Den was banned in Modern, but players quickly realized that it is still a very good sideboard card in the format regardless. This is all over the place there in a lot of different decks. It also gets a good amount of Legacy and Vintage play, not only in sideboard, sometimes you see it in main decks there, plus it gets some Commander play too. This one's a little odd. Lightning Greaves from Commander 2016. It goes up $5.13 this week to $13.69. Now, maybe this copy of the card was a little underpriced, but I think this jump kind of overcompensated. I would expect the price to even out pretty soon. And I don't think anyone's really paying $13, $14 for a Lightning Greaves, especially considering that it gets reprinted all the time. As a matter of fact, this just got reprinted again in the Maestro's Massacre Commander deck. It is a highly played Commander card though, in lots of builds old and new, and it was in that Jolene deck on Game Nights this week too. Strangle Rootgeist, the copy from the list, up $7.02 to $11.80. This was part of the list for Crimson Vow as well as Neon Dynasty. It did come off for New Capenna. And this jump again is just due to the fact that there's not a lot of copies online for sale right now, and I do think this will even out pretty quickly too. Although it is a reprint of the Game Day promo, which does make it stand out. In Modern, this is in Yawgmoth, which is a pretty popular deck. It does get a little Commander play too, and I have even seen this in some Agnus builds already. And the last card in this section is Liliana of the Veil, the Modern Masters 2017 copy, up $7.30 to $89. The Innistrad copy up $11.82 to $98.92. So this got hot after Luris was banned in the format. Luris was holding this card back heavily in Modern, but now it's making a comeback. As you can see, it's in Jund, Rakdos Midrange, and more. It also gets some Commander play too, in like Turgid God of Fright / Turgid's Lantern builds, for example. And that takes us to the Vintage Spotlight. This is where we talk about cards that see play in Legacy, Vintage, 93, 94, or cards that are just popular among collectors. Remember, in this section, for the cards that don't sell often, which is the majority of them, the prices are going to be a little more similar to what you might see on a price tracking website. Again, without a lot of sales, we do have to lean a little bit harder on asking prices. Also, too, remember the older, more iconic cards in this section, the price you see is going to be somewhere in between high-grade raw and high-grade graded copies of the card. However, if I see a price that's not really lining up with true sales that have happened recently, I'll point that out. First, we have Tolarian Academy up $3.89 this week to $140.20. In Vintage, this is an Esper Tinker, Paradoxical Outcome, and more. Forest. Now, it's the one you see on the screen. It is one of those Battle Royale forests that's up $5.24 this week to $12.23. Now, this particular one jumped up not too long ago due to scarcity online, and it has stayed pretty turbulent since then. This does happen sometimes with these harder to find basic lands. Someone decides they want to grab a number of copies of a particular land to put in a deck or two. They disappear immediately on the marketplace, leaving only the really high-priced copies behind, and you see this artificial inflation a little bit. Now, I will say I do see the appeal in this card. First off, it is a hard-to-find basic land, and it's a reprint of another hard-to-find basic land, the Portal 3 Kingdoms copy of this. Also, too, when this type of thing occurs, it's typically with white border lands. There are players that like having those in the deck because they stand out when you fetch. Next, we have Scrubland from Revised. It is up $5.79 this week to $375.99. It is our only dual land today, though. Force of Will from Alliances up $8.61 this week to $129.99. Huge Legacy and Vintage staple found in multiple builds in those formats. Highly played commander card as well, and lots of builds there. Intuition from Tempest up $8.66 to $214.78. You'll see this in Legacy Sneak and Show, Omnitel, High Tide. Also get some commander play in different builds. Another Battle Royale land is moving. This is the mountain you see on the screen, going up $9.52 to $12.10. This is probably a copycat buyout because we saw a couple different forests going up recently. Again, this is inflated. Abu Jafar, the copy from Arabian Nights, is up $10.68 this week to $63.84. Mana Bond up $14.67 to $45. This is an older card that's yet to be reprinted. And this is in a new variation of Legacy lands called 8 Mulch. Typically, those decks run 4 copies of this, and it has been doing well in MTGO. On top of that, this does see a tad bit of commander play too. And again, there could be some additional interest in this because of those Commander Legends leaks I talked about earlier. I see Manipulator from Unlimited. In fact, all the rest of the white border cards in this section are going to be from Unlimited, so I won't keep saying that. If you see a white border card, just know that's where it's from. This goes up $19.05 this week to $169.05. Sarah Angel up $20.40 to $117.50. Island Sanctuary up $21.09 to $119.99. Grim Monolith, this is up $22.68 to $324. In Legacy, this is in Colorless Cloudpost, the Epic Gamble. This also sees a good amount of commander play in various builds, and it did get a Command Zone podcast mention this week too. Sunglasses of Urza up $43.96 to $139.94. Is that for real? Well, I have seen high-grade raw copies hit about $50, so yes, quite short of the $140 you see there. But I have not seen a high-grade graded copy sell for a while. When one does, yeah, I could see it hitting at least this price in the future. Cockatrice up $60 to $100, and this price does fall in between high-grade raw and high-grade graded copies for the card. Lich, this is up $72.43 to $329.47. Now, this could be interesting in a Quiza build, sure, but I don't think that is directly moving this card. These unlimited cards, they just have a life of their own outside the realm of gameplay. When it comes to the price you see on the screen, I have seen high-grade raws sell for close to $300. I have not seen a high-grade graded copy sell for a while again, but when one does, I'm sure it could go for a good bit more than this. Candelabra of Tawnos. This is up $396.01 to $1,795. High-grade raws are really going for about $1,200. I have not seen a high-grade graded copy sell for a while again, but potentially it could pass this price that you see on the screen when it does. Library of Alexandria. This is the last card in this section today. It is up $425 to $4,875. Is that for real? Well, this does seem a little high. High-grade raw copies can sell for about $2,000, graded for about $3,900. And that takes us to the Commander Spotlight. Now, all the cards in this section are moving, at least in part because of Commander, but there could be other things influencing them as well. In some cases, even more so than Commander. But as we go through, I'll let you know if that's the case. First, we have Academy Manufactor. This is up $302 to $8.70. This is an Asmo Food Modern Decks, but Commander is really what's pushing this. It has been a popular Commander card in many builds, including Prosper Tomebound, but now it's getting even more play because of some new Capenna cards. I've seen this in Agnes, Ginny Faye, Ziatora. Also, I have seen some using this as an upgrade to Obscura Operation, or putting it in fresh builds around Tivit from there. On top of that, there were 2 decks on the Game Nights episode that were running this card this week. One was Jolene, which we talked about earlier. The other one was a Jorna Nightfall Alchemist. Ulmar, Ulvenwald, and Foreman Friends Forever build. Those are two of the redone Stranger Things cards that you'll find in the list now. Thorn of Amethyst. This is up 327 this week to 3290, and this is in a number of commander decks, including Winota Joiner of Forces. In Legacy, you'll see this in sideboards of Eldrazi Aggro. In Vintage, it's in Aggro and Prison Shops. Stomping Grounds, the one from Guild Pact. It goes up 335 this week to 2297. And of course, this is in a lot of commander mana bases like Korvold and a bunch of new decks. Jetmir Nexus of Revels, Ginny Fey, Agnes. In Pioneer, you see this in Naya Winota, Jund Sacrifice, and more. It's in Crashing Footfalls, 5-color Omnith, and much more in Modern. And this was in all 4 of those commander decks on game nights this week. Oran Frostfang, this is the copy from the list. It was only there for Kel time. It goes up 352 this week to 1899. This is getting increased commander play now in Jetmir, Agnes, and Ginny Fey. Sword of Fire and Ice from Darksteel up $3.60 to $67.94. Now this gets commander play in a variety of decks, but in Modern this is in a lot of decks that are getting more play now since Loris is gone. It does seem like the popularity keeps growing there. It's in Death and Taxes, 4-color midrange, many times Hammer Time, and much more. Revel in Riches, the Mystery Booster copy up 335 to 1839, the Ixalan copy up 370 to 1948. This is in many commander builds, including Korvold again, plus it's in some builds around New Capenna cards like Agnes, Ziatora, and Vazzy. Voice of Resurgence from Double Masters up 372 this week to 887. This is seeing increased commander play too now in Jetmir as well as Rocco. In Pioneer though, this is in Naya Midrange, 5-color Fires of Invention, and in Modern you'll see this in Abzan Stoneblade. I think the combination of Pioneer and Commander are moving this the most. Mana Crypt, the one from Double Masters, is up $396 this week to $180. Huge commander card in many builds, including Korvold again. Additionally, this is a good upgrade to the delayed Heads I Win, Tells You Lose Secret Lair commander deck. In Vintage, you see this in Esper Tinker, Paradoxical Outcome, and more. Earthcraft is up 405 this week to 168.10. This is getting increased commander play now in Ginny Fey. This is also a reserve list card, so it doesn't take a whole lot to move the price. Exorcist up $422 to $48. This does see a tad bit of commander play, but really it's moving mostly because of its status on the reserve list now. This might be the start of a buyout, something to keep an eye on. Survival of the Fittest from Exodus up $449 to $259.99. This is in a variety of commander builds, again including Korvold. It is expensive, but could be a good upgrade to Riveteer's Rampage. Also, I have seen this in fresh builds around the Beamtown Bullies too. Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, this is the one from the list that is up $452 this week to $38.70. And this was there for Zendikar Rising and Keldheim. And of course, it is seeing increased commander play now in Giada builds, but it's also in a couple of those newer Pioneer decks that I mentioned earlier. Mono Green Ramp and Mono White Midrange, and I do think that's the key driver this week. Also, this is in Mono Black Devotion there, Mono Green Stompy, Mono Green Midrange, and Mono Red Midrange. Calculating Lich, this is up $466 this week to $13.10, and this is from the Game Nights 2019 product, only comes in foil. This gets a little commander play in Isshin 2 Heavens as one and more. Dika Fractal Theorist is up $536 this week to $825, gets a good amount of commander play in Hinata Dawn Crown builds and more. Now though, this is in builds around New Capenna cards as well. Some are picking this up as an upgrade to Maestro's Massacre. Last week, the Command Zone podcast mentioned that this could be a good budget upgrade for that build, and that may have brought some attention to it. Others are planning to add this to fresh builds from a card from there, and Hello. And on top of that, there was a thread about this card on a prominent MTG message board this week. Again, that could have brought more eyes to the card. Treachery is up $738 this week to $83.99. This does get some commander play in various builds, including Nicol Bolas the Ravager. It could be the beginning of a reserve list buyout. Again, another one to keep an eye on. Last card in this section is Jungle Patrol. It is up $29.44 to $31.75. Now, this one does feel like a reserve list buyout. Most likely, though, the buyout is based on speculation that maybe this could be good in a Commander Ginny Fey or Jetmir build. I have yet to see any deck lists running it, though. And that takes us to the Premium Spotlight. Obviously, we could talk about premium cards for days and days and days. But, of course, we have limited time, so I try to pick a couple cards at least every week that are interesting to talk about. I try to avoid things that are just targeted for a buyout, or maybe cards that are dry for a week or two that are going to go back down in price soon. This week I selected 2 cards, and much like in the vintage section, many times these cards don't get a lot of sales, so I do have to rely a little bit more on the asking price. But again, if true sales are not lining up with what you see on the screen, I'll point that out. Survival of the Fittest, the Judge Foil. A lot of these have been hot recently. It's up $65.50 to $1,800, which when you see a card like this going up a smaller amount, there is a better chance that maybe this type of increase will stick. Time will tell, of course. These things can still be very turbulent. When it comes to the true price, I did see a high-grade raw copy of this sell for about $1,000. Next time a high-grade graded copy of this sells, I do think it is possible it could pass $1,800. And our last card today is Grim Monolith. This is the Urza's Legacy Foil. It's up $249.51 to $3,649.50. Is that price for real? Well, I have seen high-grade raw copies of this go for about the price you see on the screen, and a high-grade graded copy sold recently for almost $7,000. Alright, that's going to do it for this episode of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. As always, if you stuck with me to the end, I appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Until next time, hey, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.